Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Court Storm College Hoops Talk podcast, which you can find right here on the Court Storm Media Network. My name is Kanaye, and I'm joined by my co-host Josh, and today we're going to be bringing you guys another weekly Wednesday podcast episode, just breaking down some of the other exhibitions that have gone down since the last time we uploaded on this podcast. In addition, we're also going to talk about some of the bigger storylines once again, G Leaguers potentially coming to college basketball, or looks like we already do have some coming to college basketball, along with just this loaded freshman class. We're also going to give our reactions to ESPN's top 100 men's college basketball players list, which they released, I believe, a week and a half ago up to this point. But before we get into all of that today, please do anything you can to engage with our videos, whether it's liking, subscribing to the channel, or just telling other people about the Court Storm podcast. It really goes a long way with driving YouTube's algorithm, getting a larger audience to watch our videos. So let's get right into it. Josh, I'll ask you first. Was there a particular exhibition game that went down between our last video and now that you wanted to talk about first?
I think there's actually two, and we were just talking a lot about it in the pre-recording, but Duke and Tennessee and St. John's and Michigan. Let's start with St. John's, Michigan. I think that this is a huge, just changing game for both of us, and also just how we're going to be viewing this Michigan team led by Yax going into this season. And let's say here, Yax is the real deal. I am fully convinced now that Yax is a top 2 or top 3 player in all of D1 basketball right now. I'm fully convinced he can win Player of the Year. And I think Michigan has now the opportunity to win the national championship.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the same boat where I think Michigan can potentially cut down the nets on that first Monday in April, I should say. I mean, I was a big believer in Yax going into the year. I definitely thought my personal Player of the Year race was going to be between Braden Smith and Yaxel Lendeborg going into the season. I'm glad to see Yaxel really reaffirming those beliefs I had, which I'm sure a lot of people had as well. But on top of that, I'm just thankful that he decided to pull his name out the draft, and now we get a full college season with Yaxel Lendeborg playing in Ann Arbor for Dusty May. And like Josh said, he's as advertised. I mean, he just the skill set he brings to the table. It's unfortunate because he is a little bit of an older college player. If he was, for say, a 19, 20-year-old kid, he'd be a lottery pick. You could make the argument he could be worth taking with the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft. And obviously he's not that young. He's 23, 24. So I'm sure he probably will catch a lot of too old for college basketball jokes this year, which is understandable to a degree. But I still don't think you could take what you're probably going to see out of Yaxel Lendeborg over a whole season sample size. I don't think you can take that for granted. I think he is really going to be one of the better players we've seen over the last few years. And right now, on this very day, he's definitely my pick to win National Player of the Year.
No, I 100% agree with you. Honestly, that is not even a crazy take. I might have said something different a month ago, but I am on the Yax train as of right now. And for St. John's purpose, they lost by like 2 points, but the offense looks great, looks so much better than it was before. Ian Jackson's still in the doghouse, as Kanaye mentioned in the last episode. Hopkins looks wonderful. I'm really liking to see Zuby return to form compared to the first game against Townsend. And this team is still a pack of dogs, like not even a pack of wolves, honestly. This team is so strong with defense that I honestly feel like they can be what exactly we expect from a Patino-led team. Defensively strong, decent enough offense to bring you the way. I'm still not taking St. John's out of the national championship conversation, but obviously it looks like Michigan is showing more strength now than I ever thought they would have, and I'm all here for it, to be real with you.
Yeah, and before we move on to Duke, Tennessee, there was 2 more takeaways I had from that exhibition between St. John's and Michigan, one for each team. I'll start with Michigan since I went on a tangent about Yaxel. Again, just to reiterate, I definitely do think that they have a chance to be a national championship contender this year, where me and Josh weren't so high on them coming into the year for a lot of the issues we talked about. Where was the shooting going to come from? How is Elliot Cadeau going to manage running point? Can Dusty May adapt from having a point guard like Trey Donaldson last year to having Elliot Cadeau, whose play styles are really night and day different? And I got to say, they are turnover heavy. Elliot has turned the ball over a decent amount over the first 2 exhibition games Michigan has played, which is kind of what we saw in Chapel Hill at UNC for Elliott last year. But he's still one of the better passers in the sport. He still has racked up a ton of assists in the 2 exhibition games the Wolverines have played. And I got to say, Michigan's half-court offense looks a lot smoother than what it did last year in Dusty May's first season with them. And I also think that the shooting questions have kind of in a way been answered. I mean, you have Yaxel really spacing the floor. He started off the game against St. John's with 2 straight threes back to back. On top of that, you got great shooting from Namar Burnett, who turned it around after the kind of rough shooting showcase in the first exhibition game Michigan played against Cincinnati. Additionally, LJ Kaysen really lit it up too. You had Cheddar coming off the bench, make some threes, as well as Trey McKinney got it kind of going for the first time as well. And what you have with Merez Johnson at Amara, being able to really impose their physical wills down low right next to the Yaks. I mean, Michigan's going to be a really tough physical team to play this year. And I don't know how many better front courts the Axel is going to have to play against, which are better than St. John's' front court. And he showed up against them. I have full expectations he should do that night in and night out in the Big Ten. Now, to get to my takeaways about St. John's, I do think that while there are still some offensive woes where you really don't have any of the guards truly emerging just yet as the catalyst for being able to run an offense, I do think that there were good moments for Dylan Darling where he had tough takes to the basket. He was able to draw a charge defensively, and he also was able to make the open shot when he got it. And I think he's going to be a crucial component for this team this year, just because I don't think Isaiah Sellers being named the starting point guard is something that's going to be something that's prolonged over the course of the season. Obviously, Ian Jackson just hasn't worked out so far. I feel for the kid. But I do think it was really optimistic if you're a Johnny's fan, seeing the playmaking coming out of your front court post players between Bryce Hopkins, Zuby Ejiofor, Dylan Mitchell, who, by the way, was awesome in that game. He's going to be a human highlight reel this year, so definitely be on the lookout for a lot of poster Dylan Mitchell dunks. But those guys passed really well out of the post, playmaking for other people, and I think there's good to take away from how they performed defensively as well. I think they forced a lot of turnovers on Michigan, which could also be on Michigan just being turnover prone. But overall, I think there's a lot of good to take away for both teams that I think they're going to be able to learn, fix some of the mistakes, and come back as much better teams. They're going to be able to point back to this exhibition as a reason why they are a top 10-ish team in the country this year.
Yeah, no, listen, it's a win-win game, in my opinion. I get the big takeaway more or less is how good Michigan did in comparison to what a lot of people were thinking, especially us.
Yeah.
St. John's doesn't look bad. We're not going to hate on St. John's. The team still looks very deep. I like both the Dylans. I like where Zuby and Bryce are going. Well, it's like Michigan's having the season they want to have, and that's a really good thing to see. We want to see Yaxelin actually lead a team rather than getting stuck with a team that doesn't really work for him. But transitioning over to the Duke-Tennessee game, this is the Cam Boozer game. This is the Cam Boozer show-off season. I really feel like he's carrying the torch from Cooper Flagg almost perfectly. And if Yaxel Lendenberg is the second best player in D1, then Cam Boozer's 3. He has put himself in the national title and national player of the year conversation with Duke almost not overnight, but like over this game. He's convinced me at least. A 2026, like 2025, like 5 assists, plus 2 blocks as well, if I'm not wrong. He had the stat line completely shown. He had a double-double in the first half, by the way. Like, this man can hoop in a way that I never really expected. And he plays like a big. He plays like a point guard at times. He really fills a role that I never felt like a Boozer twin was going to fill in the same way like Flagg was going to fill. And the team around him looks beautiful. Isaiah Evans is growing up into the player that everyone thought he could be, but we didn't really see a lot about him last year. I think the nickname Slim really fits. I think he was just the guy you want to see going for the rim, going for the 3. He really has just a great variety mixture, and Shire was playing him everywhere he could. I think Pat Nagamba is coming into his own. He's playing the center at a level that I don't know if Kaman Malawak even played. I'm going to be so honest with you. And Dame Sarr looked great. I know we didn't see a lot of Boozer's younger brother or Nicholas Kamania, but this starting 5 looks diabolical. And I'm very excited to say that I've hopped on the Duke train. I think this is a team that can win a national championship. And Cam Boozer is definitely in line to win a National Player of the Year if things go well.
I got to say, I thought Duke was maybe a little overrated in the preseason AP poll going into the year at the number 6 spot. Now, after seeing the way, not only how Cam Boozer has performed, because I kind of knew that he was going to just be a guy the second he stepped on campus in Durham. And having John Shire endorse him saying that he thinks he could have the impact Cooper Flagg had for last year's Duke team, then that tells you really all you need to know about what the type of player he is. I think what really concerned me more was the supporting cast around Cam Boozer and seeing Isaiah Evans play the way he has in the 2 exhibition games against UCF and then Tennessee just a couple of days back now. It's really impressive to see. I was telling Josh off recording that I think he could definitely have a similar path to the one Jordan Hawkins took with, of course, playing at UConn here, where decent freshman year where he had moments in spurts where he was able to get on the floor. Then second year back, just absolute flamethrower, one of the best shooters in the country. Ends up becoming a mid to late lottery pick, which is something that I can definitely see Isaiah Evans ending up being. Hearing and seeing what Big Pat and Gagba did down low, where I do like the take that he is actually better center than Kaman Malawach. I think he is probably a better college player than Kaman Malawach. Obviously, might not be as good of a pro prospect, but in terms of college play style, I think Big Pat probably is a lot better in that aspect. And you also have Caden Boozer, who's got extended minutes running the point. It honestly seems like there could be a world where we see Caden start over Caleb Foster. That's not to write off Caleb Foster completely. He's going to get a lot of minutes on this team. But Dami Sarr also played a good amount from what Josh was telling me, and it was good to see him get some run-ins on the floor. But main takeaway is Cam Boozer is really, really good. He's got a chance to be the number one pick in the draft. Everyone's talking about Debansa, Peterson, rightfully so. But Boozer should be right there with them.
Yeah, no,
He definitely can win both National Player of the Year. And I mean, I think Duke has a legitimate chance to make a Final Four now. And I got to give Shire credit. I know I've not been the biggest Shire fan with my track record on this podcast of some of the segments we talked about regarding Duke in the past. But I think Shire just really is a great recruiter, arguably one of, if not the best recruiter in the sport right now. And just what he's been able to do in retaining key rotation pieces and developing them, like we see with Big Pat, like we're going to see with Malik Brown, Caleb Foster, likes of those guys. Isaiah Evans is another great example. Damian Harris as well. I'm sure will also bring some good shooting this year. I mean, really, you have to give Shire a lot of credit. It's just going to come down to if he can perform in close games and be able to go on another deep run in March, which I definitely think this Duke team has a chance to do.
Yeah, no, I really do feel like this Duke team has a lot of the same qualities that it had last year without having the star power potential. And another thing about John Shire itself, and I mentioned this also off recording, if John Shire can make a Final Four with this team without the star-studded crew that, as I aforementioned, he had last year, then all the hate I had against him, or all the doubts I have, I should probably say, on John Shire are off. This man does not rely on the big teams to get it done for him. He is a good coach. I think he is a good coach right now. But if he can do the same thing he did last year with a team that honestly does have less skill than they were last year, then I really feel like he fits the role at Duke and he can be the perfect continuation to what Duke had with Coach K. And I do like John Shire. I think he's getting a lot better as he ages into the role. And this could be his biggest year yet, which says a lot considering last year was really his biggest year. And that's still probably the truth until this March.
Yeah. I mean, no one's had to walk into a tougher situation than John Shire, where you're not necessarily having to build a program up from scratch, but you have to fill enormous shoes that were left by Krzyzewski at Duke. And I honestly have to say that I don't think anyone could have asked for anything more outside of winning a national championship. He's already made it to the Final Four. He's made the NCAA tournament in all 3 years he's been a coach at Duke. And I mean, I just think that you also have to kind of thank Cedric Coward for choosing to go to the draft as well, because they get Cedric Coward this year. They're probably going to win they probably win a national championship with Cedric Coward on their roster, the way Cedric Coward is playing in the NBA right now. But I guess to move forward, were there any other exhibitions you wanted to talk about specifically?
I actually did want to slightly focus on Tennessee. I don't want to count them out on this. Okay. It was still a decently close game. Ahmed looks good. He will be leading that team for sure. Gillespie looked all right. I'm not crazy about the other guys surrounding him, but considering they were under 5 point per game scorers, they look like they're going to step up pretty well. But I think beyond those 2 games, I wasn't really looking at much else. I know Purdue and Kentucky had their game. I know I'm a Purdue fan. I know I'm a Purdue student. And I know covering Purdue in general will have a natural bias for me at least. But you're playing at Rupp. You're playing a preseason game. It's not going to be anything more than that to me. I do feel like there is a little bit of concern around a guy like Clough, who didn't really show off the way I was expecting. And the overall depth didn't really grow from the way I was originally thinking. But Kentucky does look the part, especially Jasper Johnson. He was the guy I really wanted to touch upon for this conversation. 15 points coming off the bench. Great start to your career. Looks like a guy who could be one and done. I honestly feel like that was a great pickup for Mark Pope. And considering that once again they're playing Brandon Garrison for all of non-conference, Kentucky doesn't look like they've stopped. I really feel like this team will play exactly the same as I would expect them to with or without Jaden Quaidens.
Yeah. I mean, from what we saw out of Jasper Johnson, just really dynamic what he's able to do off of ball screens, off the dribble. I think that in a way, Jalen Lowe being hurt for this exhibition, and I forget exactly the timetable for his health, and if he's going to be ready in time for the start of or for opening night, I should say. But I think if you're in a situation where Jalen Lowe is ready and he's available, you don't get to see Jasper Johnson play for the extended minutes he did against Purdue. You don't know what you have there necessarily. Now you do. You see Jasper Johnson go up against arguably the best guard in the country, Braden Smith, run the offense in the minutes he played coming off the bench. And you know you have a guy now there who can replace Jalen Lowe when Jalen Lowe needs a breather and run the offense efficiently. Again, be a dynamic guy with the ball, being able to hit shots. I mean, he shot really well from beyond three-point arc. And I think overall it was just really encouraging seeing that if I'm a Wildcat fan. And I think Kentucky is definitely in a good spot now, knowing what they have in their freshman talent. I think I definitely take away more good for Kentucky than I do bad for Purdue in this game. Obviously, you mentioned Clough was a little disappointing in his Purdue debut. But overall, I think Purdue should figure it out. I think for them, it's going to come down to defense because their offense should probably be the best in the nation this year. I see Ken Palm already has them ranked number one. So I'm not all too worried about how they perform offensively this year. It's going to come down to defense. And I think that's where CJ Cox is really going to have to come into play.
Yeah, no, certainly. Once again, to just transition back to Kentucky, this team looks great. They were a Final Four team for me. They are a national championship front runner for me as well. I'm not denying the abilities of this Kentucky squad. I am very curious, though, as to see where they go from here, especially, like I said before, with Brandon Garrison as their starting five. I feel like there is a lot to talk about Jalen Lowe and where he can fit in, and if he really is the correct point guard for this Kentucky squad. As I've said all offseason, this is probably the deepest team, in my opinion. And yeah, if they don't beat Florida for the number one spot in the SEC, who cares? Because Florida's a great team in their own right. But this Kentucky team looks like they look like a breath of fresh air in Lexington that we haven't seen since like early Cal days, I would say. This is probably the best Kentucky team of the 2020s right now.
Yeah, that's a fair take to make. I'm not going to go against that too hard. Just one more exhibition I really want to touch on briefly before we get on to our next segment. It was Kansas versus Louisville. Again, Darren Peterson is really, really good. He had, I think, 21 points in the first half alone, and almost in a way just kind of put it in second gear in the second half, where it kind of just laid back. At times when Kansas needed a shot, when Louisville was starting to make it a little interesting, he'd come in, nail another three. Overall, I mean, he shot, I think it was 6 for 10 from three. Regardless, he had 6 3-pointers. He did really good getting downhill. He had a nice dunk in transition. He's really good. It looks effortless for him out there. Louisville, I wouldn't be too concerned about. I definitely think seeing Michael Brown, definitely was not a great start to his Louisville career. It was one game. He's a freshman. I'm sure he's going to bounce back and definitely play a major role in what should be a really good Louisville team this year. But overall, Darren Peterson's really good. And Cole Rosario also had a pretty solid game. Kansas actually could be pretty sneaky this year. I'll give him the credit there where maybe I haven't been before.
Definitely. And this, once again, not necessarily to slight Louisville. They didn't look as amazing as we originally thought. This team can still be a Final Four contender, maybe win a national championship, depending on how they go in the future. But I guess this is more of a conversation of Kansas actually being a good team and Darren Peterson doing everything that Bill Selfie said would do. And maybe there is more to Kansas than I originally thought. I'm still not really on the train of Kansas right now. They are still maybe at best top 3 team in the Big 12, probably more towards 5 or 6 in my opinion. But I really feel like the Darren Peterson show has started in Lawrence, and I'm excited to see the next generation of Jayhawks get ready to watch this man play.
Yeah. Also, real brief, quick shout out to Malik Thomas, Darius Acuff, though those two both.
Yes, that's such a good one. Arkansas
they
looks
lit up the box score
scary
in both their exhibition games. So both those guys, they could be the best tandem in the country this year between those two.
Yeah, no, I think Cal knows what he's doing again. Which, what do you know?
Yeah, it's classic Cal. But let's get on to our next segment and give you guys our thoughts on ESPN's top 100 men's college basketball players heading into the 25-26 college basketball season. Josh, I'll ask you first. Are there players that you see that shouldn't be here? Maybe players that aren't here that should be? Players who are too high, too low? I'm just curious, what are your thoughts when looking over this list?
Honestly, and for the record, when I saw this list, I felt like we had to talk about this. ESPN does not do this on a regular basis, and we know ESPN can be with covering basketball. They're not really the best with NBA top 100s, but they did better than I expected with this list, and there really hasn't been a top 100 list I've seen other than ESPN. That said, they do underrate a lot of players I do want to touch on. The biggest one is Cone Carr. Cone Carr is ranked 98th in the country.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that
that's
might be the biggest underrated player right now. And I have been a Cohen Carr believer for this entire offseason, and I'm continuing to be that way. He did great in the preseason game that he played, and I think he could end up being, or already is, a top 50 player right now. I expect him to be the stalwart of this team's offense, and honestly, a team that could make an Elite Eight, Sweet 16. This man looks like a star, and to put him at 98, barely inside the top 100, is a little bit egregious, especially considering where his future is going, especially in his junior year. This man is primed for a breakout. He's given so many more minutes and so much more of the ball now more than ever. There's a guarantee he gets better from last year.
Yeah, I love the Cohen Carr shout there. I definitely do think he is a lot better than what was the spot again? 93?
98.
98. Yeah, that's even worse than what I thought. But yeah, I mean, overall, I'm not mad at the list. I think in terms of the names you needed to have here, they do have them here. It just kind of comes down to where you personally value having players on this list at. And don't get me wrong, there definitely are some people who probably shouldn't be above others. Like I think specifically, I don't think someone like a Lawan Watts should be over someone like an Isaac McNeely, a Xavier Lee, or even a Fletcher Lawyer, Carter Knox. I mean, I think that's a little shocking to me. I understand Lawan Watts has a lot of hype coming over that Texas Tech program, which I understand. We've both gone on record and we haven't been too high on that T Tech program going into this year. Not trying to slight that Red Raiders program. Love Grant McCastle and what he's doing with that program. I just don't think that they are as good as some other people in the media are giving them credit for. But overall, I mean, Lawan Watts is a good player. I don't think he should be above one of the better winners in the sport. Fletcher Lawyer, someone who I think has proven more coming over from the mid-major level in Xavier Lee, as well as, another guy, Isaac McNeely, who's performed at a really solid pace, shooting 40% from three at Virginia last year, now playing with Louisville. And I mean, again, this list overall, it's solid. The players who should be here are here. It comes down to where you value
Yeah,
having some names
yes.
over others.
And I do think on that point, and listen, this is the biggest sport that you could probably cover, other than maybe like baseball, for example, with how many players there just are around. I think that I could probably name five players off the top of my head that probably could have been in here or like 101 to 105. Goon Guaf is probably the best example. I was also going to mention him. He was not listed here. I think he probably is a top maybe 80 to 90 player. He fits really well behind Miles Bird, and this is probably one of the best teams that Brian Dutcher's ever assembled at San Diego State. And Magoon Guaf has the opportunity to win Mountain West Player of the Year. He was great last year. He probably will be Defensive Player of the Year, if anything. Should be enough of a
Yeah.
reason to put him in the top 100. But I think a guy like him in particular was kind of slighted by this. I do think that additionally, a player like Jackson McAndrew, who is ranked 83, probably should be a little bit higher, especially when considered that Dylan Freeman was, I think, ranked 63 in this list. And I think they have a very similar amount of capabilities, in my opinion. I'm not necessarily sliding on Owen Freeman, but overall, especially considering Owen Freeman won't be starting this season because of an injury, I still feel like they have similar talents because McAndrew is really coming into his own. And he's replacing a huge open space in the Creighton roster that I think he's going to fill pretty well. I mean, it's obviously something that he won't fully replace, given how big of a deal Kalkbrenner has always been in Creighton's roster. But McAndrew is, I think, a lot lower than he needs to be. And, 83 versus 63 is a pretty big difference in my mind for guys that are maybe 5 points off or five players off in difference.
Yeah, I mean, one guy who I think particularly I would like to see higher is Miles Bird. Again, it's tough to say what other names I would have him above, but overall, I think Miles Bird is just really, really good. I mean, he's a guy I think has a chance to be a first round pick, if not a lottery pick, this year, depending on how he performs, which all signs point to him playing at arguably an All American level, I think. And I definitely think he could be deserving of being higher than what he's at, I believe, 55.
Yeah, no, I do like a good part of this list as well. Like, for example, I think they rate the centers and the big men pretty well. Alex Condon is 14, for example. Graham Ike is
Yeah.
13. Tega Owe is 12. These three, I think, are in pretty good succession to each other. Now, that said, I will say the top 10 does need work. I'm going to be real. The top 10 is probably the one that I think
Yeah.
needs the most work. ESPN has their top 10 listed as Trey Kaufman-Renn, Donovan Dent, Darian Williams, Zuby Ejiofor, Cam Boozer, Yaxel Lindbergh, Darren Peterson, JT Toppin, AJ DeBansa, and Braden Smith. Now, I'm not saying that a guy like AJ DeBansa can't be the second best player coming in, but as we outlined in today's episode, I think Yax is
Yeah.
2, and that's pretty fair. And I think Toppin and then Boozer would probably be my top 4. DeBansa is probably 5.
Yeah, that'd probably be the order I'd have him in on this very day right now. And I think D5 or I guess D1 now in
Yeah,
Darren Williams
D1.
might be slightly a little too high,
Yeah, he felt
but
out of
I'm not
his
mad at him being in
place.
the top 10.
And there are guys that I think could be higher. Like, for example, PJ Haggerty is 11. I really feel like
Yeah, he could be higher.
he probably should swap spaces with Darren Williams. I think Haggerty is once again a very underrated player. He was second team All American, so he already
Yeah.
was a top 10 player last year, and he only
I
gets
mean,
better from here.
Donnie Dent as well could, I
Yeah,
think, be moved up.
Donovan Dent's definitely he probably is all right at 9. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think
Yeah, I mean, I'm not mad at the spot, but I think there's an argument people can make for him being a little bit higher than where he's at.
definitely. Do you have anybody else you want to mention, or just anything else from this list?
No, I think we pretty much hit on everything that I wanted to really go over with this list. So again, overall, I'm not mad. I like that they included most of the names that I would have liked to see here. And I guess that brings us to our next topic, which is again storylines. We'll end with some of the bigger storylines right now. Let's start with the recent conversations and the things that have transpired regarding players coming out of the G League to return to play college basketball, or some haven't played college basketball. They just went straight to the G League out of high school. And now they're going to go to college. It's a mess. I'll let Josh speak on his thoughts about regarding this topic first. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's getting crazy.
Yeah, no, and I will say for the record and for clarification, they only are allowing this for G League players who never played any minutes in college basketball. Obviously, all these guys were offered scholarships and positions, as every player probably would, but they ended up going with G League or OTE or some form of like player position. Maybe they went overseas and then went into the G League. And while it's not an egregious amount of players, if, say, for example, this continues and you have 20 to 25 players going into next year that can be eligible, it would be the greatest bidding war in college basketball history, because everyone can understand the G League is a far better league, at least in talent, I should say, than college basketball. And all these players
Yeah.
are possibly call ups to the NBA. Like I think 3 players that have so far joined from the G League into college basketball this year are all guys that could have had 10-day contracts if things worked out for them with the teams they're playing right now. That said,
Right.
NCAA is really not caring enough, apparently, or they're just really listening to somebody out there when it comes to this level of eligibility, because we're already having the talks about eligibility with international prospects. For example, earlier this week, we found out Mahalo Petrovic, who was fully cleared to play college basketball and is 22, by the way, has 3 years of eligibility, which I think is
Right.
still a little bit of a question here. But then
Yeah.
when you bring in a G League prospect who is 23, 24, and by the way, these guys can play this year. London Jamison, the recent Louisville commit, who played for G League Ignite for 2 years, can play in December. I forgot his name. He played for the Westchester Knicks. He's getting offers from Houston, BYU, and I think Virginia. He can also play, I think, in January if he commits later on in, I think, this week. And I just find it crazy how quick and how completely random this is. Imagine throwing in a top G League player into college basketball. That's not just unfair, that's cruel. That's cruel for everybody who is meant to play in the college basketball system and
Yeah.
completely unjust, especially considering all the coaches don't even know what's going on, too. Like,
Right. I mean, there's already been a plethora of coaches come speak out about it, most notably Tom Izzo, where I completely agree with everything you had to said. You have to feel for the high school seniors, the incoming freshmen. This is just going to lead to so many people, so many coaches across the country wanting to recruit over their incoming freshmen. Because I mean, at the end of the day, what are you going to want? A kid you've never seen play college basketball or basketball at a high level versus someone who's played professionally that's one step away from the NBA, that was on the doorstep of being an NBA player, but just obviously was on a two-way or just wasn't good enough to get offered a 10-day something where he could have gone up and gotten called up and played for an NBA team. I think that again, it's just really a failure from the NCAA. They just continue to push and push, and they're really, really pushing it with this. Listen, I guess the eligibility criteria that I'm looking at right now is a player must be within 5 years of their high school graduation. So that does put, for say, an ultimate cap on how old a G League player can be. Can't just be like what Patino was joking about, tweeting that he gets first dibs on Giannis. But hey, I think you let this happen, it's just going to open up a whole new world of different possibilities which can happen in college basketball, not good ones, because we might see a day where we see an NBA player end up back in college. But hey, like Josh mentioned, London Johnson, he's got a chance to play with Louisville this year once they enter league play. I'm also seeing just 2 hours ago, someone talked about Kakiat, 6'8" forward, is exploring a move to play college basketball, played in the G League right now with the Mad Ants. And then the first case was Theory Darlin, who's playing with Santa Clara this year. But overall, I mean, I just really am against it. I think already with the international players, so many freshmen are being recruited over. Just again, at the end of the day, you want to recruit a kid or someone who's played professional basketball, played basketball at a high level, where it literally is their job to play. I think 9 times out of 10, most coaches are going to go with the professional over the incoming freshman there. But again, I just think it's bad for the sport. I want to get back to the traditional values we had of bringing in a freshman prospect and developing them over the course of their 3 to 4 year, however long you can keep them in school over their collegiate career. Of course, you're going to have the one and dones, but I mean, the beauty of the sport was seeing someone come in, not play all too much as a freshman, develop and become an all-American, all-league level player by the time they graduate from their school, and staying with one school too.
yes,
That was
yes.
another great part of it. But now it's a
No, it's a complete mess, and this supersedes everything. Like we were talking 5 years ago about transfer players were taking away
yeah,
scholarship opportunities from freshmen. We were talking a year ago, 2 years ago, about international prospects are taking away positions from transfer players and freshmen. This even takes into consideration the international prospects. When you go to an even higher level, and you start reaching the pro leagues for American basketball, that's when things get very serious. And that's when the question really becomes, what is college basketball in comparison to everything else? Because apparently college basketball is also European basketball. It's also international basketball, but it's not, and it definitely shouldn't be NBA basketball, because then what's the draft? Then what's the reason for all this training? What's the reason for the G League if G Leaguers can just play in college basketball anyway and everyone can have a piece of the cake? That's not how things
yeah,
should work. And I think any person who's not an NCAA head core person should understand that you don't bring in a person who is superseding the powers of one organization, should be allowed to play there, should be allowed to be there. It's like taking a baseball player and bringing them back to college. There's just no reason to do it at all. And I don't
right,
understand where they're going, especially considering that they're not even going to let eligibility slide for players that are already in the college basketball system, like Tyon Grant, who luckily got his eligibility accepted. Thank God he's playing. But the fact that we had that is a conversation alone
Yeah.
is stupid because who
Yeah.
wants to see this? Who honestly wants to see G Leaguers in college basketball?
I mean, yeah, that's a great point. I'm so happy for Tyon that he was been granted the eligibility to be able to play this year. Of course, we talked about in our last episode last week. If you haven't seen that episode, definitely go check it out. I know we talked about the whole situation with Tyon being denied eligibility to play this year. Thankfully, he was. So again, congrats to Tyon. Super excited to watch him play for Gonzaga this year. But the fact that that was even a conversation, like you said, Josh, a long process where the NCAA doesn't know what to do and ultimately decide to tell a kid who effectively lost 2 years of college basketball due to on court heart failure that happened again twice to the kid, and then decide to originally tell him no, he can't play. Meanwhile, you bring in guys who have played professionally. You give a good kid, or not even a kid, you give a grown man who's coming over to Illinois at 22 years old, you give him an extra 3 years of eligibility so he can play till he's 25, 26, depending on when his birthday is during the year. I mean, the fact that they said no to Tyon in the first place, it's pretty unfortunate how sad the NCAA is when it comes to their decision making.
Yeah, it's just a horrible story. And I don't think it's stopping. The NCAA is a
Yeah,
greedy organization. We've already seen it with the expansion of the tournament. We've already seen it with the eligibility issues. It's only going to get worse until something happens. And we're only just two
right.
people online. I wish we could do something. I wish you guys
Yeah,
could do something, but we just have to sit back and pray, basically, that this does not become the sport for the next few years because I don't know if I'd actually want to watch growing up if G leaguers are
yeah,
just going to be allowed in like everybody else. It's just not fair.
definitely. Yeah. And to kind of get onto the other storyline we want to talk about, this is something that me and Josh kind of had an exercise we kind of did in talking through off recording where we wanted to propose the take that this freshman class might have a chance to be better than last year's freshman class in college basketball, where, of course, last year it's headlined by Cooper Flagg. You have Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper. This year, I'd argue the star power is there as well. You have Debanza Peterson, Cam Boozer, Koa Pete, Braden Burries, Nate Met. I think that this class has a chance to be deeper than what last year's was.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think this like maybe it's not a star studded. You're not going to have a Cooper Flag in this one. It's pretty
Yeah,
simple. Cooper Flags are generational talents. Like you're just not expecting to have that level of competition or that level of previous built-in experience at this point in a guy like him. But this is kind of like 2021 with Cade Cunningham. I really feel like this is a incredibly deep freshman class, and it's shown in all the big leagues. I think the freshmen in the Big 12, in between obviously Demanson and Peterson, but Koa Piat, Braden Burries,
Yasafu.
yeah, Yesafu, I think is a great addition. And then the SEC has its insane talent mixture with Jasper Johnson. I think probably being one of the
Right.
best freshmen in that league.
Watch out for CJ Ingram
Yeah,
too
CJ
in
Ingram as well
Gainesville.
in Florida. I really feel like all the top 25 teams have a good freshman to show off. And for all the stuff we were talking about with how freshmen are now being like the worst treated class of people in college basketball, this is, thank God, the year that they can show off and be who they are
Yeah,
supposed to be the hype prospects, be the draft prospects we want to see that NBA players want to have on working with them on their teams. Like there really is a lot to like about this class, which, coming into the offseason, a lot of people didn't really think a lot about this class. People really didn't look up to them the same way they looked up to last year's. This is another generational class. I think a lot of people are,
yeah,
and I think people are ignoring it still. I still feel like until we get to even March, I think so many people and like just general audiences are not going to understand how good this freshman class is. And I really think they're going to be all wrong. I really hope to see that people grow into liking a lot of this top 50 with freshmen.
and I love some of the points you made because the landscape of college basketball right now is not set up for freshmen to succeed. And we could talk about all the stuff that's transpired with allowing G leaguers to play, the international players in the midst of all that, all those roadblocks and barriers to freshmen being able to break out and be stars in the sport. This class is just that talented to the point where that none of that stuff matters. They're still able to shine and be the focal point of teams, have to be the main guy that other teams are scouting and when they're going through video walkthroughs and game planning for their upcoming games. Bansa, Peterson, Boozer, just the performances we've seen out of those three guys alone, coupled in with what we've seen out of the other performances from other freshmen like Tana Yesufu with Baylor or forgetting off the top, Jasper Johnson.
Yeah, Jasper Johnson. Yeah.
Some of the other performances that might have not have gotten as much notoriety. These guys are going to be really good. I mean, they've already proved in their first, of course, they're not real games or exhibitions, but their first real true showings, playing in front of a crowd, playing against college level competition at the high major level. They've played really, really well. And I think it's only going to make for an incredible aspect of what should be an awesome year in college basketball.
Yeah. And I'll throw a little bone out there for the freshmen that stuck around from last year, because we talked about how good this freshman class was. Isaiah Evans, we already spoke about, but Rob Wright deserves his flowers. I think a lot of sophomores that are going to get a lot of good work type. Boogie Flenn, for example, is in that mix. So
my guy, Pettiford.
Yes. The class of 2020, I guess, was it 4 or was it 5?
It was 24.
Yes, the class of 2024 is still showing up, so don't ignore them as well. But this class is going to be a nice one to keep around.
Yeah, and let me tell you, a lot of players out of this class, they're going to go on to have long NBA careers for sure. But overall, I think that's pretty much going to take care of everything we had on this weekly Wednesday podcast episode on the Court Storm. As always, engage with the videos in any way you can. Season is coming up. It's about to start. Definitely be on the lookout for a preview video on opening night's Florida-Arizona game that me and Josh are going to be getting out to you guys as soon as we can. And until next episode, see you all next time.
Peace.